Hi everyone. I'm gonna use my phone to check and just make sure that everything's working, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, there's an ad. Um, okay. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's get started. I do want to apologize for the sound. My camera is like going crazy and it will not work if my mic is plugged in. So we are stuck with headphones for today. Um, I wanted to do this live. I've actually never interacted with this creator previously. However, I was literally just like watching, like watching videos at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I happened to see this one, and I was like, "Well, Eurovision is tomorrow. I might as well like find out more history about it." So we're going to be watching that. I do have the link to the original video in my description box if you do want to go follow this creator and like watch this video on your own without my own commentary. A little bit about me for the people who watch this later. My name is Sienna. I'm American. Last year was my very first time watching Eurovision. Prior to that, I had literally never heard of Eurovision, didn't know what it was. So that was an experience, that was a journey. um, so I'm really excited to, I guess, like learn more past, just kind of like the glitz and glam of what happened last year. So I'm going to go ahead and let's get started. That's what I need. Okay. Oh. Okay, so hopefully you can see this, and I'm going to put this in the chat just in case, again, anyone wants to go and watch this on their own. Then send that out. And anyway, let's go ahead. Let's get started.
2013, Russia introduced an anti-gay propaganda law which alleged to protect kids from homosexuality. Seemingly in response to this, bearded drag queen Conchita Wurst was chosen to represent Austria in the Eurovision Song Contest 2014. Russia's entry that year were basically kids.
Oh, let me go ahead. I'm going to pause myself while we do this.
Themselves, teenage twins, the Tolmachevi sisters, who themselves hadn't said anything homophobic but became a target for the audience's anger towards Russia. They booed the girls while cheering Conchita.
Thank you very much, Green.
Despite this, the Russian twins actually found themselves leading the scoreboard, at least to begin with. Conchita gradually made her way up the scoreboard, gaining points from all over Europe, including Russia itself, until finally it became clear, before the last points had even been given, that no one could overtake her.
It's no longer possible for any other country to catch up. We are ready to announce the winner. The winner is Austria!
Conchita Wurst had won the Eurovision Song Contest, the first drag queen and the first openly gay man to win the show.
This night is dedicated to everyone who believes in a future of peace and freedom. You know who you are. We are unity, and we are unstoppable.
Conchita performed her song again, but this time the lyrics took on a whole new meaning. She changed the words at the last minute to say, rather than "I will rise up," that "we will rise up." And we all knew this wasn't just a victory for Austria, this wasn't just a victory for Conchita, but for queer people everywhere, for gender non-conforming people. It was a victory for liberation and freedom, a slap in the face for Russia and their homophobic law. And they say Eurovision's not political. The Eurovision Song Contest is
Okay, so I have actually, like prior to me figuring out what Eurovision is, I had actually heard or not heard of Eurovision, but I had seen like screen grabs of this performance just like randomly on like Twitter and that type of thing. So when I first actually like saw it as associated with Eurovision, I was kind of like, oh, this is cool. So yeah, I had actually assumed that the winner was transgender, but that was incorrect. They are an openly gay man who does drag and performed in drag, from my understanding of what was just said.
commonly considered to be very, very gay. At least it has been for the last few decades. We've had a gay winner, a trans winner, bi winners, lesbian winners. But Eurovision actually has a secret gay history, which goes back to the very beginning. Even when it was impossible for contestants to be out in the 50s and 60s, it was well understood that there were gay performances happening. The gay fans knew who was gay and which gay people were producing songs. The winning song in 1961 was about a gay relationship and the struggle of being together in a homophobic world. Except the lyrics were all made gender neutral to disguise the true meaning. But gay fans knew. They knew. Eurovision is also famous for its campness, and the gays do love a bit of camp. But the challenge of bringing open queerness to Eurovision took a surprisingly long time. The first out gay contestant wasn't until 1997, and yet his act is surprisingly heterosexual for one that simultaneously looks so gay. Trans singer Dana International won for Israel in 1998. In 2000, the Israeli band Ping Pong brought both Israeli and Syrian flags on stage as a message of peace, which enraged the Israeli broadcasters so much that they disowned them and said that Ping Pong would have to cover all of the Eurovision expenses on their own. All the drama around flags kind of overshadowed the fact that Ping Pong also gave us the first Eurovision gay kiss. It was just a little peck, but it's there. And that would be both the first and the last gay kiss at Eurovision for a long time. A fun Slovenian drag act brightened up 2002, but 2003 was when the real controversy began. Young people won't remember that Russia was once notorious for its supposedly lesbian teen pop duo Tattoo, who took the world by storm by pretending to be girlfriends. I know it's hard to imagine now, but this was a time when Russia's biggest cultural export was probably this supposed pair of teenage lesbians. Russia was hoping that the global popularity of these girls would finally bring them their first Eurovision victory, meaning that Eurovision would then be hosted in Russia the following year. The girls were notorious for being provocative and sexy, and had suggested their Eurovision act would include some of said sexiness. But the Eurovision showrunners said that a backup recording of their dress rehearsal would be made just in case the girls kissed, so it could be censored. This was a family show, they said, and a lesbian kiss would be inappropriate and would lead to a disqualification. Oh yes, such a family show Eurovision is. Nothing sexy or naughty here. Nope, nothing to see here, folks. We all just pray to Jesus during the ad breaks. Effectively,
Okay, and so this is like so much is happening so quickly. But yeah, it's not, or how do I say, it is family friendly with the understanding that like sex and like sex appeal is going to be a part of everything. So if you understand it in that way, then yes, it's family friendly. There's no super overt actions or anything like that. But yeah, super family friendly. It's super cringe. I'm glad it's changed, but that was definitely a thing. Also, Russian teenage lesbian duo singers. So much is happening. Like, this is crazy.
gay kissing had been banned at Eurovision. In the end, Russia didn't win, and Tattoo didn't even attempt to kiss, nor did they attempt to kiss when Russia finally did host in 2009, and Tattoo reprised their performance with a military choir and flowery tanks. Wow, thank you, Russia. That was so totally normal of you. Good job. But this was 2009, and by now, queerness at Eurovision was becoming increasingly more visible and accepted. Serbian lesbian Maria Sherifovic
Oh my
won
God,
in
I love this
2007
song. I
with
love her
Molitva.
song.
She wasn't out at the time, but it's pretty clear what's happening here, with Verka Serduchka's drag act coming in second place above a slew of other queer and camp performances, though certainly no gay kisses. When Serbia hosted in 2008, they really leaned into the lesbian aesthetic of Molitva with a full-on lesbian wedding. They were like, yes, lesbians, work that gender. So when Eurovision went to Russia in 2009, local LGBT activists wanted to leverage the international attention of Eurovision to organize a pride parade in Moscow
really?
on the day of the Eurovision final.
That's illegal, right?
Despite the fact that the mayor had actually banned Pride as he had in
Yeah.
previous years. The parade was broken up by the police and at least 40 protesters were arrested. Sadly, Tattoo's flower tanks didn't do much to advance gay rights that year in Russia. That year's winner, Alexander Rybak, said after the show,
"It's a little bit sad that they chose to have this parade today, because the biggest gay parade in the world was tonight, you know?"
2013 saw a particularly misogynist song about being a submissive wife to your husband suddenly reveal a surprise gay ending.
Okay.
Oh, I see. She's a submissive wife to her wife. Wow, what a twist.
Okay, because that's going to be like the incels in MacTow are going to love that.
The performer, Krista Siegfried, stated that the kiss was meant as a message urging her country, Finland, to legalize same-sex marriage. Now, Eurovision is technically supposed to be apolitical. They're very clear about that.
Please remember that our motto is building bridges, and music should stand over politics tonight.
Yet, somehow, these gay marriage messages just keep getting through. So at this point, there seems to have been a precedent set by performances like Siegfried's and Ping Pong's that gay kisses at Eurovision don't usually come from queer performers, but are rather used for political and showbiz purposes. They tend to have this vibe of like, oh, look, it's so heterosexual and wholesome. Boom, it's gay. Gotcha. In fact, as far as we can find, gay kisses in Eurovision have only been performed by straight people, or at least not anyone who's out. This means that the only queer performer who...
That was Stripper, I think, right? From last year?
Considered a gay kiss on stage, Tattoo member Yulia Volkova, who actually turned out to be bisexual for real, was told no by Eurovision producers. Obviously, Tattoo's kiss wasn't going to be genuine or wholesome and really would have been as much of the shock value as Ping Pong's, but how wild is it that Eurovision banned a gay kiss from Russia that was completely apolitical? But then again, I suppose we saw things very differently back in the 2000s, such as Terry Wogan with his UK commentary when he saw Serbia's very lesbian performance could only bring himself to constantly
I love that song.
remark on how unattractive he found Maria Sherifovic.
Now this Maria is a homely looking girl. You see, looks aren't everything. It's that little strange looking girl.
UK's
Who let him on the pop? Homely and strange. Oh my God.
that year was a pandering camp song full of innuendo and European flags, because surely that's enough to get every country to vote for you. Just wave their little flags and they say, oh, that's me, I'll vote for you, UK, I'll vote for you.
Pull firmly on the red cord and blow into the mouthpiece.
I understand pull on the red cord and blow into the mouthpiece is
Okay.
meant to be suggestive, but it's just one of the more upsetting innuendos I think I've ever heard. Wogan was convinced, as people voted for Sherifovic and ignored the UK's beautiful pantomime, that it must be an Eastern Bloc conspiracy. The communists taking over Eurovision.
We're going to have to build a wall.
It seemed like Eastern Europe was too
Trump would have loved him.
uncultured to see the heart and soul that went into the UK's song. I think that what the UK doesn't understand is whenever Brits threaten to come to another country, people assume they're either going to try and invade and colonize, or more likely get drunk and make a mess. Neither of
The first one's more likely, given historical happenings.
which is particularly fun for anyone else. Western Europe felt that the Eastern countries must be discriminating against them because the former commies didn't understand normal things like democracy and meritocracy and objectivity. They're corrupt and conniving, you see, as you would expect a communist to be. This had to be true rather than the idea that they were just sending good stuff. Where Western European artists would avoid something as tacky as Eurovision, Eastern artists were excited to go, sending the biggest, most popular stars in their regions. while Western Europe was sending camp flight attendants and turkey puppets. And it seems like the reason Western artists saw Eurovision as tacky and bad for their careers was at least in part because Terry Wogan made Eurovision into a joke. In Eastern Europe, it's taken more seriously, so they just send better content. But Wogan wasn't totally wrong about bloc voting. It is a thing. Countries commonly vote for their neighbors, but it's not really for political reasons and certainly not for the sake of communism, but just because
it's like it's more cultural. I'm like, that's my assumption. Like, oh, who was it? Was it Moldova? Or who was it last year? Like, there was a song that I really, really enjoyed. It was kind of like polka-esque. And it was, I feel like, based on, it's like it's like a very like folk-y type of music. Hold on, let me see if I can find Eurovision. Yeah. Yeah, it was Moldova's last year. And it's like, again, it's more of a like a polka, like folk type of sound. So I'm going to assume that people within like the same area, like the same geographical region, are going to have like a similar history or a similar like musical like background. So it would make more sense that they would like that type of music, especially if it's more folk. However, if it did have more to do with like a generalized like pop sound, I can see why it would be considered to be like more palatable to like the general population of who is actually watching Eurovision.
They share languages and culture and music markets. Singers popular in Serbia will also be popular in Croatia, while singers popular in the UK will also be popular in Ireland. In fact, Wogan didn't seem to have a problem with the fact that the only countries giving the UK any points were the ones that the UK had previously colonised.
There's a lot of those. Anyway.
See, you can always rely on the Irish.
If bloc voting were a real problem, the same countries would be winning every year. Eastern European countries just weren't winning disproportionately. They didn't even win half the time, yet the West was convinced that a great injustice was happening to them. That same year, in 2007, Austria complained that the contest had become politicized, and they felt so victimized by Eastern Europe's success that they quit and didn't come back for another 3 years, ignoring their own history of political choices. Austria's song that very year was an activist anthem created for an HIV fundraiser, but I guess in their eyes that didn't count as politicizing the contest, and yet Maria Sherifović's love song did, because I guess she is Serbian. And a year after that, Terry Wogan was so convinced that his Eastern Bloc conspiracy theory was true that he quit his job as UK Eurovision commentator. So to try and appease the tantruming Western countries, Eurovision introduced juries to counterweight alleged bloc voting via the opinions of music industry professionals.
So the juries weren't always a thing. It's literally because of xenophobia. It's literally because of xenophobia is the reason why like the juries are now part of Eurovision scoring. I thought it was weird. Like, why would the juries be there? Like, who's electing them? Who's ascending them? Like, how is that? Like, how is it organized? I didn't really understand that, but it makes more sense that previously it was just more of like a democratic, everyone votes for who they want rather than, or countries vote for who they want rather than the countries vote for who they want. And then we also have this jury of like unelected people also voting based on something. But like a random xenophobic reason totally makes way more sense.
So juries were literally introduced to Eurovision because of the prejudice towards Eastern Europe.
Xenophobia. Yeah. Anyway.
Ironically, while the juries were supposed to make Eurovision more fair and meritocratic, they actually just ended up making it more corrupt. There have always been attempts to cheat at Eurovision, but trying to influence the televote is complicated and costly, whereas bribing a 5-member jury is much easier and much cheaper. There have been countless instances of juries being caught cheating over the years, as well as just not doing their job properly. In 2016, a live stream...
Did that not happen last year? Like, there was like an issue, and so like some votes were like discounted and like that type of thing. This happened literally just last year.
A Russian jury member showed jurors on their phone not paying attention to the act, and a juror stating she would vote for Armenia because her husband was Armenian. And this panic over Eastern Europe dominating televote was all a bit pointless anyway. In the last 13 years, Eastern Europe had only won the televote twice, which means that even without the new jury system, Eastern Europe would not have dominated Eurovision. Because Eurovision now included so many countries, they introduced a pre-selection process, later becoming the 2 semi-finals, so that only the best of them would perform at the actual Eurovision finale. The first time Germany didn't make it, they felt incredibly victimized, and the EBU got a bit worried about the countries paying the most of the contest not making it to the final.
And this is where the big five comes. I was just about to ask when he started saying that Germany didn't make it. I was like, well, then where'd the big five come in? Okay. I actually really appreciate this video because the kind of like peculiarities of Eurovision are starting to make more sense when you get like a lesson on Eurovision's history rather than like going through and like reading a Wikipedia or something like that. This makes way more sense.
So Eurovision ended up introducing the Big Five system, which grants these 5 large Western countries a direct entry into the final without having to compete in the semis to get there first. So today, despite being more inclusive of Eastern Europe, the whole of Eurovision is structured around giving big Western countries a special advantage, whether they actually send good performances or not. They still don't win, but they could. In theory, they do their best. Not going to the semi-final means that they often show up to the final with a song that they don't know if Europe is actually going to like or not, and end up humiliated with 0 points in front of everyone.
And the United Kingdom gets 0 points.
It's strange to think that back in...
But literally, I think, while it's kind of like sad, also Germany was at the bottom of that list too. Anyway, while I think it's kind of like sad, I think about like last year and what's his name? Malik, I forget his last name. Malik Harris, Malik Washington. I'm trying to think of like generic, like African American last names. I think it's Malik Harris. Well, like he was like he was like the lowest. I think everyone knew that he was going to be the lowest, but he was just there. Like he was getting drunk, he was having fun. I think there's like the experience that's there, not necessarily winning because only one can win, right? But like enjoying it. So, I mean, it's embarrassing, yes, maybe, but it seems like it could also be like a lot of fun just to go and experience.
In 2007, the narrative seemed to be that the West was being victimized by this Serbian lesbian and a little love song, when nowadays Eurovision has really built this impression of a progressive Western Europe fighting for gay rights against the backwards primitive Eastern Europe. You saw it in Sweden's portrayal of themselves in 2013, praising their own progressive attitudes towards gay rights. You saw it in the constant booing of Russia in the following years. Graham Norton, the UK's current commentator, tends to be shocked when Eastern Europe votes for something queer.
She's not going to get 12s, I think, from Ukraine or Georgia or Slovenia.
Oh yes, of course, Graham, those countries aren't as advanced as the UK, even though Slovenia did send drag queens 12 years earlier and Ukraine did 7 years earlier, but let's see what they did give Conchita.
Austria.
L'Autriche.
I'm amazed Ukraine have given her that many points.
Austria. L'Autriche.
Now, this is extraordinary. That was a country I really didn't think would give her a big vote.
Congratulations, Conchita. Austria, 12
L'Autriche, 12 points.
And Georgia actually gave Conchita more points in the televote than the UK did. And UK gave Conchita the same number of televote points as Russia. Of course, in reality, some of the biggest queer and gender-bending acts have come from Central and Eastern Europe, including Serbia, Ukraine, Slovenia, Russia, Lithuania. The same as the Eastern Bloc voting accusations, this dichotomy of gay-friendly Western Europe and backwards homophobic Eastern Europe doesn't hold quite as much water as we like to.
Yamame, 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 yamame. I don't think that I'm saying that right.
We like to interpret the gay scandals of Eurovision as a West versus East thing, with enlightened countries like the UK and Sweden being grand protectors of all gay kind, and evil communist Eastern Europe as the villain.
Hola, man, baby. Hola, baby. Yeah, man, yeah, my man. Okay, I'm done. Anyway.
But really, this is a conflict within every country. While UK current commentator Graham Norton was happy about Conchita's win, even crying about it, his predecessor Terry Wogan called Conchita's performance a freak show. Here's Russia's 2021 entry praising trans icon Nikki Tutorials during a Eurovision interview.
You're sexiest woman I ever know. Really talented and very, very brave.
Nikki's like, well.
Well, that's a way to start. Hello, welcome.
When Conchita's act was internally selected, it was a scandal. In Austria, there was a huge number of Austrians who didn't want to be represented by a bearded drag queen, but nobody interpreted that as Austria being an evil homophobic country. On the other hand, when Slovenia sent a drag act to Eurovision 12 years earlier, and some Slovenians protested that, their protests were discussed in the EU Parliament as proof that maybe Slovenia is too regressive to join the EU. When Russia introduced their anti-gay legislation in 2014, there were a number of Russian citizens and organizations who publicly protested it, including Russian Eurovision winner Dima Bilan. But that's not the fun narrative. We enjoy a good West versus East, a good democracy versus the evils of communism battle. And this goes back to the origins of Eurovision. The show was developed by an organization called the European Broadcasting Union, aka the EBU. Now,
okay, I'm sorry. I didn't want it to be like to interrupt things. Sorry.
When the EBU was founded, there was an anxiety that Eastern Europe would dominate the broadcasting unions bringing together European TV stations. There's just too many of them, and that's way too many Eastern European votes. So the EBU was founded by Western countries such as the UK, France, Switzerland, and a distrust of the Eastern countries was officially baked into the fabric of the EBU. Of course, Eurovision was created to bring Europe through the universal language of music.
This competition was created in 1956 to unify a continent torn apart by war.
But the first Eurovision was all Western Europe. Eastern Europe gradually joined over the coming decades, but the tension never really went away. During the Cold War, Eastern Europe wanted to create a joint contest, but the EBU was like, no, thank you. You should totally make your own Eurovision, though. Oh, how fun would that be? Eastern Europe.
What's the point of having a European song contest splitting Europe in half? I don't know. I'm American, so I guess like I don't get the beef in the same way Europeans would. Because I'm literally just like, not you're all the same, but like, I don't know. It seems like a weird way to be like confrontational. But again, there's that.
European Vision, yay! Rara Rasputin! And they did. It was called Intervision, and unlike Eurovision, it opened its doors to all of Europe in 1968. So the first Eurovision that truly brought together Eastern, Western, and non-aligned countries wasn't Eurovision. It was Intervision. Intervision didn't actually last. It was a thing. Eurovision's attitudes finally changed after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Suddenly the vibe was all about uniting Europe with a song with the chorus Unite.
We're gonna unite Europe. Is that him?
Unite Europe actually winning in 1990.
Unite Europe.
So finally, Eastern European countries were in. Until Eastern Europe won the contest a few times, and that just made Western Europe really uncomfortable. The animosity towards Eastern Europe goes way back, as far as the Enlightenment, when Western Europe developed an image of itself as uniquely civilized and special. Eastern Europe as a backwards barbaric nation.
Yeah. Even over America. Not to randomly insert like an American opinion, but you know, you're watching me for a reason. It's that mindset definitely still exists today, and it also exists towards like American non-Western Europeans, just like generally. And the kind of like it's anyway, yeah.
Neighbor was conceptualized in contrast. Eastern Europe was a scary place of poverty and superstition and rude, savage people, while Western Europe was a shining beacon of civilization and development. So Eurovision actually gave Eastern European countries an opportunity to prove to the West that they were just alike. just as modern and cultured, that we were all the same. When Ukraine last hosted while stalling for a performer who'd just run off, one of the hosts accidentally admitted to this directly.
We're tolerant, modern, very open country.
And you could see in their hosting how they tried to convey the modernity of their Eurovision. When Serbia hosted in 2008 after Maria's win, the organizers said Eurovision would help change the stereotypical image of Serbia, and they used Eurovision to prove to the West, as CNN put it, that Serbia was a normal European nation.
Yes.
So branding is definitely a big part of Eurovision, and sometimes that branding can be...
I'm so glad I read the title. Like the little card first, because I was like, what is happening?
Used to cover up the less palatable aspects of a country's reputation. The 2012 Eurovision was hosted by Azerbaijan, notorious for its poor record when it comes to democracy and media freedom. International observers have suggested that Azerbaijan had not had a free and fair election in 3 decades. They won the previous year with a song which sounds uncomfortably... And Azerbaijan already had a bad track record when it came to Eurovision. A few years earlier, due to a territorial dispute with Armenia, authorities had interrogated anyone in Azerbaijan who voted for Armenia's Eurovision song, saying it was a matter of national security. What are you, some kind of move your body sympathizer? 2012 was the most expensive Eurovision of all time. Azerbaijan bulldozed housing with people literally still inside the buildings to make way for their new Eurovision arena. And then, of course, they basically turned the Eurovision into a tourist campaign. Eurovision has an enormous potential to increase tourism. Countries will take the opportunity of hosting to basically turn the whole of Eurovision into an ad for tourism. They even get funding from tourism boards or governments.
That makes sense.
Becoming aware of the human rights issues.
That sounds like every Olympics ever. Especially like when they did it with like Russia. Also, China definitely the same pattern for 2008. Brazil did the same thing, and the majority of their like stadiums are now falling apart because it was literally just for tourism, and the people there don't have the capacity to continue using stadiums. And by capacity, what I mean is like there's not enough events going on to be able to sustain all of these stadiums that are being built, which is why for the next, what is that, 2024 or something? 2026, I don't remember when the next Olympics is, but when they're having like the shared Canada, US, Mexico Olympics, and they're only going to be using stadiums that already exist currently. Also, that Olympics is going to be an absolute mess. Like getting on a plane and having to fly, like to go from one event to another, like absolute madness. Like I don't even know what they're going to do, but that's a topic for another day.
Swedish contestant that year, Loren, met with human rights activists in Azerbaijan, but when she was asked about it during a press conference, the organizers cut her off, suggesting such questions were inappropriate. There were several peaceful protests before Eurovision, but the authorities broke them.
Wait, I'm going to make this a little bit faster because it is 41 minutes and I don't want to be here all night. It's also like almost 5 a.m.
them up, allegedly at one protest also assaulting the protesters. But in the end, the branding worked. Eurovision helped to improve Azerbaijan's international just based on media coverage. It was all pretty disturbing. Luckily, Azerbaijan did not win again that year. Interestingly, Loren did, meaning the next Eurovision would be hosted in Sweden. And Sweden went all out to portray themselves as basically the opposite of Azerbaijan. They were fun and progressive, and they made a big deal about how they recycle, and they love immigrants, and they have gender equality and love LGBT people.
The Swedes are extremely...
Immigrants? Was this before or after all the migrants came from Africa? I have questions.
And yet at the same time extremely tolerant.
But while definitely better than Azerbaijan. In many ways, branding can still be misleading. Sweden doesn't recycle any more than, for example, the UK does. They just burn huge amounts of trash, including plastic, which is a whole new problem in and of itself. They are also not an immigrant utopia. Literally a day after the Swedish Eurovision final, there were riots due to the economic inequality and social exclusion of immigrants. And at the time they hosted, Sweden was actually sterilizing transgender people, not allowing them to transition unless they agreed to be sterilized. Sweden also neglected to mention that the telecommunications company, which allegedly spied on the people of Azerbaijan, like those who voted for Armenia in Eurovision, was owned by the Swedish government. And that company was also the main sponsor of the Swedish Eurovision. But none of that is what we remember when we look back on Eurovision 2013. We remember the great progressive Swedish Eurovision following Azerbaijan, with Pietro performing a pretend gay marriage on stage and pushing around recycle bins. We don't remember Sweden.
Okay, so it's propaganda, nationalist propaganda, literally. Also, 1.5 is too fast, so let's go here.
We remember the Eurovision branding of Sweden. Now, of course, it's great when countries are dedicated to upholding LGBT rights, but that's different from turning it into branding, which is when it becomes a problem, like with Sweden, which has a history of turning its progressivism into a patriotic trait, into a symbol of what makes them exceptional and superior. This sort of branding is called homo-nationalism. And homo-nationalism can be used as a justification for all kinds of things. Maybe the government wants to keep immigrants out of their country. So suddenly the narrative becomes, well, those Eastern Europeans or those Middle Easterners, they're awfully homophobic now, don't you think? We should really try to keep them out of our country. Oh, just a noble government needs to protect the poor vulnerable gays. So maybe there's a good reason to increase police and military power, so, you know, the gays can still enjoy Grindr and her. I just think no one's enjoying her.
What's her?
So while Eurovision was telling us this,
we're not just smorgasbord and social democrats. We also love a catchy tune.
The third biggest party in the Swedish parliament was an Islamophobic far-right party with Nazi roots, one of whose members was at the time organizing pride parades in immigrant neighborhoods to portray immigrants as inherently homophobic and thus fundamentally a threat to white, civilized, gay-loving Sweden. So this was literally the far right using homo-nationalism to demonize immigrants. Homo-nationalism is so ingrained in global politics that we're currently seeing Ukrainians having to appeal to it in order to secure Western sympathy and support.
Україна вільна, сучасна, хоробра, демократична країна.
Okay, you know, we cannot mention Ukraine without having to mention the fact that there's literally Ukrainian refugees that refuse to be in diverse areas. And let me not. And it was not just in like the UK, it was also happening in the United States as well. And from what I understand, there were reports in Australia as well. So it's like a widespread thing, but they're like, we love the gays. We accept them. We don't like the Muslims though. We don't like the blacks though. Ridiculous. Anyway.
Homo-nationalism sees the West as evolved, and any homophobia is just an individual problem, not a systemic one. But those other people in the East, on the other hand, they're not individuals with different perspectives. Their homophobia is inherent to their culture and therefore systemic. They're forever stuck in the past, where the West is sort of, well, done already. We finished feminism. We actually fixed homophobia ages ago, so yeah. And that's kind of what you get from Sweden's Eurovision, a very depoliticized homo-nationalist gayness, a defanged gayness, which isn't going to contradict the message.
And also, like, we totally finished racism. It's totally done. It's totally over. If you're racist, that's your problem. There's nothing national about it. There's nothing systemic about it in any of our countries. Thank you.
Message of how great and friendly their military is. When Sweden hosted in 2016, the original rules said that rainbow flags would only be tolerated in the audience as long as they were apolitical. So anyway, Israel's 2019 Eurovision prominently featured drag queens, a gay host talking about his husband and Grindr, opening the performance from trans winner Donna International. Israel definitely leaned heavily into gay branding. And this was important because Israel really had something to prove. Their branding was in response to accusations that Israel is a settler colonial state on Palestinian land, that Israel is a
which it is anyway.
Apartheid, treating Palestinians as second-class people, reminiscent of South African apartheid. Palestinians were effectively erased from Israel's Eurovision. The Palestinian flag was banned, and Palestinians kind of were too. Palestinians from the blockaded West Bank and Gaza, including queer Palestinians, are effectively banned from attending Eurovision. Activists who support Palestinians have also been told they will not be allowed into the country. So, for example, former Swedish Eurovision contestant Erik Saade, who is half Palestinian, may have himself had trouble getting into the country via the airport because Palestinians and people of Palestinian origin are subject to extended, sometimes hostile questioning, and often just refused entry into the country and sent back. When Saade delivered the jury votes from...
So literally, like, even if you are like Palestinian American or Palestinian, like Canadian or British or whatever, even you with a different passport would somehow also have trouble. Craziness.
Sweden that year, he made an ambiguous remark about not being able to be in Israel this year.
Thank you for a great show. I really wish I was there, but I'm not. Maybe next year. Maybe.
So Israel's branding needed to be clear. Israel is not colonial. It's not like South Africa was. It is a normal European nation, as CNN might put it. And one great way to do that is homonationalism. Brand the country as a gay haven, civilized, modern. And Grindr jokes are actually quite good for that, to be honest. And this isn't just a Eurovision tactic. Israel has an official campaign called Brand Israel, which has invested $19 million into specifically marketing Israel as a gay tourist destination, depicting it as modern and progressive in contrast with its Middle Eastern neighbors. Don't look at Eric Saade being unable to enter Israel to come to Eurovision because of his ethnic background.
Ethan! I'm sorry.
Please.
I'm sorry, that was my cat. You just tried to like climb my chair. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Watch these fun drag queens and relax and have a good time. In response to all this, that year's Icelandic act, Hatari, snuck in Palestinian flags in protest, and Madonna's interval performance included a dancer wearing an Israeli flag and a dancer wearing a Palestinian flag embracing.
Who's the guy she's singing with?
As a symbol of peace. This was not welcomed by the organizers, and Hatari were actually fined €5,000 for just holding up flags, and Madonna was apparently scolded for her performance, because Eurovision is meant to be apolitical, right? Well, in theory, any sort of politicization or instrumentalization of Eurovision is banned, but in practice, the EBU seems to distinguish between two different kinds of politics at Eurovision, one of which is acceptable and the other is not. State politics are unacceptable. For example, in 2009, the EBU rejected Georgia's entry for being a barely concealed dig at Russia's President Putin. But on the other hand, values politics are just
put in disco. Okay.
Fine and dandy. Everyone loves a vague song about peace and love and freedom. They're just about values.
Peace, peace, love, love, and a man in a hamster wheel.
Humanitarian messages are also allowed, such as the French song Mercy, which was about a real baby girl born on a refugee rescue boat after her pregnant mum was saved from a dangerous dinghy. So, if peaceful humanitarian messages are considered values politics and therefore allowed, you would think that peace with Palestine would count as a basic humanitarian message, right?
Israel and the Eurovision Song Contest have proven once more that prejudice, hate, racism, sexism, exclusion do not stand a chance.
But in reality, any reference to Palestine or Palestinians...
Who's that? He looks familiar. I don't know who that is, but he looks very familiar.
Seems to have been banned from the competition, messages of peace included. Surely that banning in and of itself would count as state politics, and state politics are not allowed, right? During Israel's postcards for each song, they showed footage of Israel, but sometimes illegally occupied land, which, under international law, is not recognized as being part of Israel. The United Nations has suggested that Israeli settlements in occupied territories should be considered a war crime. So the show was literally using the tourism branding of Eurovision to tell the world, hey, this land belongs to us. Please, gays, come spend your holiday money here. We have Grindr.
A certain app is on fire right now because of all the handsome tourists in Tel Aviv.
In fact, when Israel won the previous year, there had been hopes to host Eurovision in Jerusalem.
Next time in Jerusalem!
Except Jerusalem is a contested city, also claimed by Palestine. To host in Jerusalem would have been a bold political move. So I guess they just settled for bold political postcards instead, which makes sense because those postcards serve as tourism ads for Israel. And Israel was already listing Airbnb and other tourist services in their illegally occupied territories. The year following Israel's Eurovision saw a huge tourism boom, as you'd expect after a country hosts Eurovision. So given that Israel instrumentalized Eurovision as propaganda.
But it's interesting, I guess, so why there would be a pop or like a tourism boom, it's because I guess like people go and then it's like a word of mouth thing of like, oh yeah, like I went, it's beautiful, I want to go again, and then through that other people learn about it? Or is it because of all of the media attention that comes and like the media stories about it and like the YouTube videos and the XYZ? Is it that like how do you get to like how do you get to like an increase in tourism the year after, and this person is saying that it's like a norm? I'm confused. Also, if you can hear random coughing, that's my neighbor. Also, it's almost 5 o'clock, so like people in my house are gonna start getting up really soon. So, and there's my cat. Hold on, we're gonna get this. Hold on. Pause myself. Okay, so we are right back. Let's go ahead. Let's get back to it. Hopefully, I'll be able to beat out both my cat coming back and also the people around me starting to get up and go to work and that type of thing. Let's go.
And a tourist ad for illegally occupied territories. Why were Hatari and Madonna the ones to get in trouble with the EBU? Did Madonna really say much more than peace, peace, love, love? Which one of these is state politics here, and which one is values politics? The DVD version of Eurovision 2019 excludes Madonna entirely and also cuts out the clip of Hatari with the Palestinian flag, but keeps in all the postcards of illegally occupied territory, effectively endorsing Israel's political message and completely erasing Palestine from Eurovision. Was this really the apolitical way to deal with the issue of Israel and Palestine? But this isn't the first time Eurovision's policy has seemed contradictory. We told you about the Mercy refugee song, which was allowed, and Sweden in 2016 actually had an interval performance about refugees trying to draw attention to their struggles. But the following year, when soon-to-be winner Salvador Sobral wore an SOS Refugees jumper to a press conference, the EBU asked him to stop wearing it because they saw it as political.
Make no mistake, these people are not immigrants, you know? They're refugees running away from death.
So which is it? Is caring about refugees values politics and allowed, or is it state politics and forbidden? Maybe Sobral was just too open about how governments can be at fault for how refugees are treated, but then why is gay marriage always
I like him even more now. That's cool.
Allowed at Eurovision going back to 2008. Siegfried's in 2013 said specifically her performance was about legalizing same-sex marriage in Finland, which is clearly state politics and much more tangible than anything Sobral said. So what are the politics of Eurovision? It clearly has a political agenda. Maybe that agenda is simply to unite Europe. That's what it was created for, after all.
I mean, I feel like from the very little that I know, and also from what I'm getting from this video, it seems like the politics of Eurovision are money. Like whatever makes the most money, whatever goes well but doesn't ruffle the feathers, like whatever you can do to increase revenue and continue on, rather than whether it's good or bad. Like that is the most important. Like literally the whole reason that we got, like the whole reason that there's like the big five is because people were mad that Germany spent so much money, but then they didn't make it through until like the grand final, right? Like that's like purely money. There's like the whole issues with like the Eastern versus Western Europe, and like Eastern Europe started winning and so they got mad and so they introduced juries, right? Like it feels like money talks and money makes the rules, and that's like the end all be all.
Right?
This competition was created in 1956 to unify a continent torn apart by war.
Well, not exactly. I mean, not at all, actually. In fact, we've been lying to you, but only because Eurovision did it first. The EBU comes from a long legacy of unions managing European telegraph and radio connections. They are a pragmatic, technical organization. And in the 1950s, it was their job to come up with content for this new television technology, which was taking off across Europe. So they came up with this idea for a European song contest, a quick, cheap, and easy broadcast, an hour and 20 minutes. They didn't even plan on doing a second one. It would be in the same vein as like the Football Cup, a cool exercise in this newfangled concept of
Football Cup? Oh, is that what it's called in Europe? Okay.
International TV broadcasting. After all, it's cheaper to create one TV program and show it in a bunch of different countries than it is to create a bunch of TV programs all over the place. So this seemed perfect. The truth is, there was no romantic vision of bringing Europe together through the power of music after Europe was torn apart by war. It was just a cheap and easy way to make a TV show. And the project actually had to remain apolitical because that's the most efficient way to get shit done. They would never meddle with governments or the EU because that would only hold them back, overly complicate things. But they also understood the power of television, that it can be a deadly weapon of propaganda and controlled information. And the EBU wanted to avoid all of that in their little song competition. But easier said than done. Countries understood immediately that Eurovision was a great way to brand themselves. From Germany sending a Holocaust survivor and an American to the very first contest in 1956, to Franco's Spain in the following 2 decades, using Eurovision to gloss over its fascist dictatorship and promote its tourism. Countries have always known how to use Eurovision to send political messages. And the EBU has always positioned itself as apolitical, and later reinforced that with rules keeping Eurovision songs and artists in check. But being the arbiter of what counts as political is, in itself, a political act. To decide Siegfried's Gay Marriage Act is apolitical is a political choice. To decide that gay rights are apolitical is political. To allow Israel's branding to include illegally occupied territories is political. But what do you do when, for example, a European country invades another European country? We've established before that invading other countries outside of Europe is fine. The UK faced no consequences for
Wait, what? We established that one?
invading Iraq in 2003 is
on the like the behest of Americans. Okay, got it.
Israel has faced no consequences, regardless of whether they've committed illegal acts or war crimes. So what about Russia after the invasion of Ukraine? They got kicked out, right? Well, no, not to begin with. After the Russian invasion began, Ukraine asked for Russia to be expelled from both the EBU and Eurovision, and the EBU said no, Russia would be allowed to stay. So why was Russia eventually expelled? Well, because in the end, 10 other countries complained, and some even threatened to withdraw from Eurovision if Russia was allowed to compete. And suddenly, the EBU changed their mind and said, in light of the unprecedented crisis...
Right, again, it's like the one, what makes the most money, and two, what avoids controversy. Like getting past the friction. As long as it does that, then it legitimately does not matter.
In Ukraine, the inclusion of a Russian entry in this year's contest would bring the competition into disrepute. That's what it really comes down to. Disrepute. They're not uniting Europe. They're making a TV program, and they want the TV program to avoid disrepute. Eurovision has always had a sizable gay fandom, and especially now when gay rights are so widely acceptable, perhaps it would bring Eurovision into disrepute to turn down a gay performance like Siegfried's. Though apparently that wasn't a concern back in 2003 when these topics were...
with the teenage lesbian Russian women, girls.
more controversial. The issues with Israel aren't a real problem because very few people in Europe care about them. An attempt at boycotting Israel's Eurovision in 2019 fell pretty flat, barely putting a dent in the viewing figures. But when Russia invaded Ukraine and 11 countries were all complaining and some were threatening to leave Eurovision, that was enough to put the show in danger of disrepute and force the EBU to respond. So no, Eurovision was not created to bring Europe together, and even today, that's not really the function. It's just cute branding. Eurovision is just
very cute.
The TV program trying to put on a good show while desperately trying to avoid any kind of political controversy. And avoiding controversy isn't necessarily about doing the apolitical thing. So Eurovision tends to be characterized by a hell of a lot of politics, both behind the scenes and on stage, while the EBU stands in front saying, nothing to see here, folks. This is just a normal song competition. Everything's fine.
Oh, okay. Someone says, do you do music reacts too? I do actually. I've created a new channel that's going to be specifically for like music reactions outside of Eurovision. I'm not ready to launch that yet, but that is something that exists. If you want to put in like what music you would like to see me react to, you can go ahead and put that in the comments. But yeah, this channel specifically, I think is going to become more Eurovision focused, like kind of like a seasonal channel. And then I'll have other channels that do other things. Yeah. Thank you for asking that, because like that's literally the first time that I've brought this up. Okay. Yeah. So send it to me or like put in the comments or something, and then we'll see later. Yeah. Oh, hey. we're almost done because it's literally 5 a.m. here. So I'm just finishing up this video and then I'm gonna head out. But yeah. Hi.
Please don't look at them doing this. There are so many great things about Eurovision. I love being exposed to cultures that otherwise don't have a chance to compete with the American and Western music dominating the global charts. For 1 week a year, music from Moldova and Latvia has the same platform as music from the UK and Sweden. It's so incredible to get to hear songs in languages like North Sami and Sranantongo, such small languages which I'd never had the opportunity to hear before. And it's so fun to look back at all these historical milestones in Eurovision. The first openly gay artist, the first drag act, the first woman wearing trousers at Eurovision, because that was
okay.
There's a reason Eurovision is one of Europe's most popular TV events. Unlike other international mega events like the Olympics, Eurovision is a democracy, allowing the European audience to have a voice and shape the outcome each year. Eurovision has launched global...
Wait, channel name's Prod Beats X. Please, instead of putting it in the like comments here, like in the live comments, this video should be up like right after I finish. It should be uploaded as just like a regular live video. If you put it there, I should be able to see it, because sometimes the live comments don't actually like stay. I don't get to see them afterwards. So in like 20 minutes, come back and put it in the comments. Yeah. I'm going out to, but glad I'm alive. I studied for and passed the certification that I need to like change careers. And that's literally why I dropped off the face of the earth. So I was like, I'm not about to waste like $400 on this like certificate. And then I'm also in the process of emigrating. So I've gotten a list of my documents together for that too. So a lot is happening. And I'm sorry for like not reacting to more things. But yeah, a lot is going on in the IRL world. Yeah. Anyway.
Stars and given us iconic songs. Its peculiar format has even helped create a whole new music genre, Europop. Eurovision shows us a Europe that does right by its minorities, be it ethnic or LGBT, a Europe that has atoned for its past, where all countries have an equal chance, regardless of their size, or history, or EU membership. Eurovision shows us a very authentic European culture, which is fun and goofy and communicated in a mishmash of broken English and local languages. This is the cosmopolitan, progressive, and peace-loving Europe that we know and love, where the villains are booed and the heroes win. But it's not real. This perfect Europe that exists in Eurovision is an ideal, a utopia, a flattering image of how Europe wants to see itself, not how it really is. And unless we're aware of its artificial nature, those dreams of an equal, peaceful Europe can be exploited to cover up reality, and minorities can be turned into a symbol and a tool instead of actually being uplifted. We create the illusion that the problem is other countries, other people, different backgrounds. But if we really
oh, I like this creator. I like this. This is so true. Oh my God. It's like, so I went to Europe last year. I went to the UK and I went to Portugal. And this is literally conversations that I had about like just like different things and just like things that I've noticed while talking to like a few different Europeans. Oh my God, this is so good.
Really want a better world, then as the Slovenians say, we got to sweep our own doorsteps first. There's so much more to say about Eurovision, and we're going to be continuing the conversation over on our Patreon because we did so much research and have so much more to say about it. So if you want to check out more Eurovision content and also support the channel, please consider joining us over on the Patreon. Otherwise, smash all those buttons, everything except the dislike, please. And, ring the little bell. Thank you so much to all of our patrons, and a special thanks to Elegante, Aaron, AJ Mango, Alexis.
Okay, I think they're reading off their their Patreons. Okay, let me see. Can you recreate? Can I react to his video before you go? So I can not, because depending on if it's been like uploaded already, then it would just be like a copyright strike. Like it would show that like, oh, this is like content, like musical content from like a different creator. And so it could literally block my video if I do that. So again, like if you can put it in the comments, then I can react to it and like make a video and like do editing, so I'm not violating any copyright. Yeah, but I can't do it like here. Honey Kruger, thank you. It literally took me, okay, well, let me reply to this. It literally took me like people, the certificate that like I took, people literally studied for it for like 6 months, and I studied for it for about like 3 days. I still passed, but like I studied so much and I studied so hard that it literally took me 4 days to like recover physically from it. And it was not a good thing. But yeah, I passed. And like getting my documents and everything set up has set me back, I think, like $700 or $800 at this point. So we're really going to see what happens. There's some things I need to take care of prior to applying for visas. But yeah, at some point this year or like early next year, the background is going to change, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Okay. But I do want to take a second. I do want to talk about this video. I think that this video is like quite interesting. So again, I'm American. This is my first, or last year was my very first time like finding out about Eurovision, like period, to know anything. But this video actually, because of its like historical explanations, it's actually helped me understand mainly like the structure, like the structural like construction of the contest, like the organization of it, because some things didn't make sense, but it makes sense that there were events that happened that led to the creation of certain things. Like for example, like now there's like juries because of xenophobia. Well, like, and now there's the big five because Germany lost and it wanted to like move on to the grand final, right? Stuff like that, like that's like super duper helpful for me as someone who is relatively new. Not relatively, I am very new to Eurovision. Outside of that, when talking about the like the politics and the queer politics, it is something that is, it's kind of fascinating, but in the end, I feel like the society in which we live in, money makes the world go round. And so when we're looking at the things that are happening, in the end, it comes down to what makes the most money, right? When we're accepting of like gay people or queer people in this case, it's kind of oh, we're better than those people, right? Like we're bringing the those people, like the Western countries, we're so accepting of XYZ and we're much better than those like dirty Eastern Europeans. Ew. Screw them. It's such an interesting thing, like watching this as an American who doesn't super understand like the animosity in between like what Eastern versus like Western Europeans. Like I guess I can understand more on a like democratic versus like communist scale, because that's what we have in like the US, right? But just like a general West versus East, it's so fast. It's I don't want to say like weird, but it's like a concept that doesn't necessarily exist for me. So to see it play out is just kind of like nonsensical. But finding it like, or like learning more about it makes it easier to maybe not recognize, because already like recognize it, but to like rationalize it and put context to it. So again, this is like super duper, super helpful. And I'm really happy that I saw this at like 2:00 in the morning and was like, yeah, I'm going to put on some makeup and I'm going to make a reaction to it because this is great. Oh, I have, absolutely. The problem is that the EBU should be, oh wait, I can do these things. Wait, I know how to do these. Yes, okay, absolutely. The problem is that the EBU should be an association of public broadcasters whose first purpose shouldn't be making money. And that's why I hated the American Song Contest, because NBC is not a public broadcaster, rather a private company. So ABC is owned by Disney. So you are correct that it's definitely a private company. But the thing about, let's not even bring in the American Song Contest, because that was like literally I was talking to someone like a couple of weeks ago. I went out like with a friend, and like I was like talking about it, and she literally had no idea that it existed. Like it was such a bad thing. And again, I don't think they did it this year. Like there is absolutely no advertising. Ridiculous. Anyway, going back to this one. I don't want to get off topic. But yeah, I mean, the thing is I think it would be different if the sponsor for each the sponsor for each country, like the broadcast studio for each country was like state owned. Like I figure I figure that most countries have at least one like state owned or like state operated or state funded like channel, and I think that would make more sense, and I think that would make it more fair, and we would actually be able to have competent talks and competent rules and regulations when dealing with politics. If we were going through state they're all public broadcast, in recent years they've added more ads. I'm American. These ads are nothing. It's nothing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I do not even notice the ads. I'm so sorry. Like literally America's like every maybe like 9 minutes there's an ad break. Like so when you're saying like, oh, there's so many ads, like it's just like like it's not even a thing. I'm sorry. I can't talk about the ads. I don't know what it looked like before, but it's way different than it would be if it was the US. So I'm gonna stay out of that part. Okay, when you say which goes against public broadcasting, what do you mean? But yeah, while all that's happening, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. While we're on the subject of the American Song Contest, again, I went out with my friend. Like we went to go get like shabu shabu, which is like Korean hot pot, whatever. And we were sitting there and we were talking about Eurovision because she used to live in France for a little bit. And I was like, oh yeah, like there's like the American version. We had that last year. She had no clue, absolutely no clue that it existed. And I literally showed her the winner of last year's American Song Contest, which was Alexa. And Alexa was from Oklahoma, and she was like half white, half Korean, like the K-pop star. And like we literally sat there and had like a 20-minute conversation about American Song Contest and how no one knew that it existed. And they didn't do any like real ads on it, and they didn't add it. Like there were no ads even on like TikTok, which I feel like would be a much better option, because then you're like pulling in like the younger folks. Like I feel like the older generation, like boomers, aren't necessarily going to be like super drawn into like a music show. But yeah, American Song Contest was a mess. Like I was like, oh yeah, it was Kelly Clarkson and Snoop Dogg were the hosts, and she was like, what? A what? Like it's like a fever dream. Okay. Well, the point of public broadcasting is that they get money from the public and the state, but due to the media sphere changing rapidly now, they need more and more ads, which blurs the line between commercial and public. Okay, I get what you're saying there. So basically, if it was like state-sponsored, like a state-sponsored like broadcasting, then there wouldn't, or there shouldn't be ads. Okay, I got it. I get what you're saying. I was like, but still, compared to the US, like every 8 to 9 minutes, there is an extended break. Like at least like 3 minutes of ads of like random things that they're selling and like medications and just like random stuff. So yeah, I'm an American on that part. But I don't know how long you were here or any of the people that were watching were here, but what did you think of the video? And specifically, I kind of want to know more about, or I know like Olympic Song Contest, you are Eastern European technically. I don't know how the division works. I don't know how, but like, what did you think on that section? Like where they were talking about like East versus West, and kind of like the division between like Western Europe and Eastern Europe. Because again, I'm American, so I don't necessarily see it in that way. Southeast Balkan, okay. But yeah, like I don't necessarily like I don't necessarily understand like the animosity there. So it just sounds like xenophobia to me, but like I don't like that's all that I get from it. It's just like a generic benevolent Western Europe versus again like the dirty backwards Eastern Europeans. Like that's literally what it sounds like. That's literally what it like that's what I took from it. Like I don't super understand the difference. Or not necessarily like the difference. Like I guess we can do like, oh, like what were the satellites or like what was part of the USSR, and then outside of that, like what became like the satellite states, like post fall of the Russian Empire, like stuff like that. Like I can understand it in that way, like if that's what we're talking about in terms of like the division, but like outside of that, it does like the stereotypes and stuff like that. I don't get it. It's actually pretty funny because Yugoslavia was pretty much the only Eastern European country in Eurovision for the first 30 plus years. Okay. And then when did Yugoslavia have its war? 1992? Me and history. It's somewhere in there. It's somewhere in like the either the late 80s or the early 90s. It's somewhere in there. Like the breakup of Yugoslavia into the different countries. I think people often think that Western Eastern Europeans are so radically different because of the 70 years of communism. Okay. So like you're getting like the blowback from like kind of similar how people react to China. Cuz I've talked to Europeans about China because I did used to live there, and they have some ideas. So I'm assuming it would be kind of similar for Eastern Europe. Um, oh, let me reread that. Okay, let me put this together. It's a stream of thought. I think people often think that Western Eastern Europeans are so radically different because of the 70 years of communism. But it really isn't true because, for example, most Americans would think of Poland as Eastern, where I would consider it Central Europe. We're not dividing it like that. I'm sorry. So sorry. So sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. I would only consider ex-Soviet countries as Eastern, except for Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, because they're firmly in Western culture. Okay. Okay. So, like, even. Okay, you're saying like ex-Soviet countries as Eastern, but then are you including like the stands in that? Actually, I do have a question about that. Like, where do you consider? Oh, so I think Russia, Ukraine, Moldova. Would you consider Romania part of that since it's kind of like it was split up? I don't know. Anyway, that part doesn't matter. So, like, firmly, most people, or you specifically, would consider Eastern European to be the ones that were part of like the USSR. Or yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, like, while putting context to it and kind of like the stereotypes that would come with it, the stands are definitely Eastern, but only Kazakhstan is partially. But why would it be Kazakhstan when Uzbekistan is like right there? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Anyway, so like conceptually, like if I'm putting it together, it would be when I'm thinking about the stereotypes and how Eastern Europeans are thought of, it would be closer to kind of like how Americans think of Chinese, and like not Chinese people, but like the Chinese government, and kind of being kind of backwards and um like not necessarily totalitarian, but like a strong grip on the country and the people and like the way that things are. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'll take it. Thank you. Oh, this is not updating, but this one's updating. Romania and Bulgaria are weird. Okay, Romania and Bulgaria are weird. They have Balkan, Turkic, Slavic, and Romance influences and have a lot of Romani people. So I wouldn't know what to say. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on the Romani people because there's a lot there. Okay, so even though Romania and Moldova used to be one, you would consider Moldova to be Eastern, while Romania is a little bit more like mixed up there. Okay, I don't know. That's a nuance that I wouldn't know if I didn't ask. So I appreciate it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Did you know? Okay, so this is like a really random like aside, but did you know that when I was in school and like I was taking Spanish classes, like they would not name Romanian as one of the Romance languages. Like they did not name it like ever. So just like random like American, just like, oh, you're Romania, we're not including you. You can stay over there. We're only including like the Spain and the French and like the Italians. Like we're only including those. Okay, so I'm just saying, oh my eye. I'm just saying there's a lot of witchcraft and stuff there, so I don't know. Moldova also has that, but they're extremely Soviet. Okay. Okay. Everyone leaves out Romania. Like literally, like I guess like I you would think I would tell by the name like Romania, like romance or something like that, but like no, do not include it. They also did include Portuguese, which I always found confusing, and like we would always ask like why do you include Spain but you don't include Portugal, and Portugal's like right there. And then like there's like France, Spain, Portugal, but you only include France and Spain, like French and like Spanish. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, they would not include Romania. They would not include Portuguese. It was a lot. Anyway, also, is that for this year? It's also feel free to take a bathroom break to Romania's song. It's an absolute whore. Literally, I'm so bad because of everything that was happening and like all the studying and everything. I did not get a chance to like listen to anything. I literally have a list of I need to react to XYZ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like I have like an entire schedule of the things that I needed to react to. And my mind was literally just like, you spent $400 on the certification. You are taking the certification. You must pass the certification. How dare you think of anything else? Like, but I don't know okay, so it's literally like 5:35 in the morning and I have yet to sleep, but I do while I'm like wearing makeup. Even though it looks like I just woke up, I have a full face of makeup on. While I'm wearing makeup, I do want to do some like reactions to videos, but I'm also just like, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. There's a recap of all songs you just watched to get a taste. I could. The thing is that if I do a reaction to it, then it's definitely going to be copyrighted. And on top of that, a lot of the videos that I do of like compilations actually get blocked. Um, like literally like blocked, like no one can see it blocked. So, which is why like last year I think I put out like 60 videos on Eurovision, like legitimately, and did all of the editing and everything for it. But like every single one of my compilation videos that I reacted to was demonetized. And then 3 of them were like blocked worldwide so no one can see it. So like that's why like literally I think I reacted to like all of the winners, all of the second place, like the people that placed second place. Like I reacted to different things and like literally no one can see it because it gets blocked worldwide. Like yeah, anyway, so there's that. But I may just watch it for myself for tomorrow. Also for tomorrow, I may go live. Last year I literally or no, I last year I went live for like the grand final. And that ended up being like 6 hours. Like 6 hours. I don't think I'm gonna do that this year. I may wait till like end and then do like a quick discussion about not a quick. We'll see what happens, but like a discussion. But yeah, I'll figure something out and then I'll put it on the schedule and I'll actually keep these. I'll keep these schedules because they're lives and I can just like put it up and I don't have to do any editing or things like that. But yes, okay, wait, let's see. Oh yeah, definitely should probably edit out Italy. I don't know. It sometimes when there's so many, it doesn't actually tell you which one is the one that's getting you blocked worldwide. And so it's a mess. It's a mess. Get ready for Croatia tomorrow. It's a lot. Did I react? I reacted to 5 video or 5 songs and then I ended up only like putting out 2. Who is Croatia? I know I reacted to dun, 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 dun. Who is that? The girl in armor. I reacted to her. I reacted to Blood and Glitter. I reacted to Spain. Who else? I reacted to a couple, but I didn't edit all of them and put them up because again, lots happening. But Croatia tomorrow. Okay, so do you recommend I wait until tomorrow to watch it? Or do you think I should like kind of spoil it for myself for tomorrow? They have a tractor, nuclear weapons, and roses. Okay, well, I will definitely be definitely gonna be waiting on that one. I may do like I may be watching it and then do like a ow. Sorry. Sorry. but I may do like a reaction of me watching it for the first time because I literally have that sounds nuts. Never mind. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to go because it's almost 6 in the morning and I haven't slept yet because I saw this video and I wanted to react to it. But I do want to thank everyone for coming in and watching. Also for like sticking around, even though I'm literally just like busy and last year I put out like 60 something Eurovision videos and this is my 3rd one. Like a lot's changed. A lot is currently in the process of changing. So thank you for staying with me and like coming around every once in a while. But yeah, I hope that everyone has a great day or great night. I don't know where everyone is, but good night. Have a good day. Yes. Or I'm going to take a nap and then get up and like apply for remote jobs. Yay. But yeah, same to everyone else. Have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. And I'll see you maybe tomorrow, but definitely for the grand final. Okay. Okay. So bye everyone. Bye bye.